All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Look, if you're tuned into this right now, there's a really high probability that you are just exhausted. Maybe you're on your lunch break, commuting, or finally winding down after a relentless day of meetings and emails. We're so used to this constant cycle of working, resting, and preparing to work all over again. We just kind of accept it as the unavoidable default of human existence, right? But what if I told you that the whole concept of a job is actually a massive, and I mean massive, recent historical accident? Today, we're going to look at the fascinating and, frankly, completely shocking story of how humanity literally traded away its total freedom for modern employment. Because this right here, this is our modern reality. Think about it. Your schedule, your identity, even your basic survival, they're all likely tied to an employer. We've got applications, interviews, 2-week notices, and that ever-present, desperate countdown to the weekend. And we just accept this grind. We think, well, this is just how human society operates. But here's the crazy part. It absolutely isn't. Check this out. For roughly 290,000 years of human existence, there were no jobs. Zero. No bosses, no career paths. No one ever woke up on a Monday dreading the week ahead because, well, Mondays didn't exist, and neither did the weekend. Out of the 300,000 years that anatomically modern humans have walked this earth, 290,000 of them were spent completely, 100% free of employment. Let's jump into Section 1, the 290,000-year weekend. So to really understand what we lost, we have to look at what we originally had, and honestly, it completely busts the myth we were all taught in school. You know the one, we always picture early humans as these desperate cavemen, constantly starving, just scrambling to survive another day. But archaeological evidence paints a totally different picture. In most regions, food was actually abundant. Hunting and gathering is incredibly efficient when you really know your environment. In fact, anthropologists have found that early humans actually only worked, if you can even call it that, for about 3 to 5 hours a day. And we can actually see this playing out today. If we look at modern hunter-gatherer societies like the Hadzabe people in Tanzania, the way they spend their time is just stunning. Men typically hunt for, maybe 2 hours each morning. Women gather in groups for about 3 to 5 hours. And by the afternoon, they are completely done. The entire rest of the day is spent resting, playing games, making music, socializing. Absolutely no one is sitting around trying to optimize their productivity. Because they only worked a few hours a day, early humans had something that we so desperately lack today: massive amounts of unhurried time. And they didn't just sleep it away either. They used this time to create. I'm talking about painting literal masterpieces deep in caves 40,000 years ago. They carved intricate flutes out of vulture wings. They fashioned jewelry. They developed deep, complex storytelling traditions. And none of this was a job. There were no professional cave painters. This was just life. Life lived with total autonomy. Which brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? If we had it so good, working just a few hours a day, hanging out with our friends, making art, why on earth did we stop? When exactly did we decide it was a good idea to start clocking in? That brings us to Section 2, the agricultural trap. Okay, here is where the really big shift happens. Humanity took a massive left turn about 12,000 years ago. We usually call it the agricultural revolution, but the dark truth of this transition to farming is literally written into our skeletons. When humans started agriculture, we didn't upgrade our lifestyle at all. We actually downgraded our health. Archaeologists comparing the bones of hunter-gatherers to early farmers find that farmers had terrible teeth, clear signs of constant malnutrition, way more disease, and significantly shorter lifespans. Farming demanded grueling, constant physical labor. Crops don't care if you're tired, right? They need weeding, watering, harvesting. So while agriculture made it possible for more people to survive tightly packed in one place, the individual lives of those people became vastly harder. And there's a social cost here too. Before farming, humans practiced what anthropologists call fierce egalitarianism. Basically, if someone in a hunter-gatherer group started acting like a boss or a tyrant, the group would just leave. You had total autonomy. You could literally walk away. But once you plant crops, build permanent structures, and start storing grain, you are well and truly stuck. You cannot just walk away from a harvest you've spent 6 grueling months cultivating. So watch how this specific transition from hunting to farming snowballs into the birth of the job. First, we settle down to farm. Then, because we're staying in one place, we start accumulating surplus grain and claiming ownership of the land. Because we have extra food, not everyone actually has to farm anymore, which leads to specialization. Now you have people who only make pots or who only act as soldiers to guard the grain silos. But think about it. If you are only a potter, you forget how to hunt. you become completely dependent on others to feed you. This new dependency requires complex systems of trade, which require management, which eventually creates a permanent hierarchy. And boom, you have jobs. So the really crucial point to take away from this is that nobody individually woke up 12,000 years ago and voted to invent bosses, long hours, and corporate hierarchies. It was a slow, creeping trade-off. We traded our ancient freedom and our unhurried time for the material security of stored calories. And once that agricultural trap snapped shut, there was absolutely no going back. Moving on to Section 3, the Industrial Acceleration. For thousands of years after agriculture took over, most people worked from sunrise to sunset, just to survive. But the Industrial Revolution, that was a brutal acceleration of the trap. The modern concept of a job as something entirely separate from your home and your actual life really solidified right here. Now you weren't even working the land to feed your own family, you were selling your actual time. People were pushed into dangerous, unregulated factories for up to 14 hours a day, making products they didn't even own for wages that barely kept them breathing. This was the exact era where human time was truly turned into a commodity to be bought and sold. Naturally, people fought back against this. Decades of strikes and massive labor movements eventually won us things like basic safety regulations and the weekend. In 1926, the 40-hour workweek was considered a wildly radical demand. But looking back, it's kind of sad. We won the 40-hour week, and then we just stopped fighting. We built our entire modern civilization, mortgages, car payments, retirement plans, around this bizarre assumption that trading 50 weeks a year for 40 years of your life is perfectly normal. Let's look at Section 4, the modern time paradox. Which brings us to the present day and the absolute irony of our highly advanced society. Think about the big promise of the late 20th century. Technology, computers, the internet, automation, they were all supposed to free us. We were supposed to have abundant leisure time. But the reality? It's entirely different. Since the 1970s, human productivity has absolutely exploded. We produce more per hour right now than at any point in human history. But did our work hours decrease? Nope. We just chained ourselves to smartphones so we could answer work emails from bed. I mean, look at how stark this math really is. Your ancient ancestors worked roughly 1,000 hours a year. A medieval peasant, a literal serf tied to the land, worked about 1,500 hours a year, mostly because they had long winters off, plus dozens of harvest festivals and saints' days. The average modern American worker, over 1,800 hours a year. Let that sink in. We have literal supercomputers in our pockets, but we labor hundreds of hours more than medieval peasants did. We have internalized this whole system so deeply that we've let it completely consume our actual identities. Think about it. When you meet someone new at a party, what is the very first question you ask? It's almost always, so what do you do? We don't ask what they love. We don't ask what kind of art they make or what they think about late at night. We ask how they generate economic value. We have literally replaced our humanity with our job titles. But here is the thing you have to remember. We still have the exact same brains and bodies as those ancient humans from 40,000 years ago. We did not evolve to sit in ergonomic chairs under flickering fluorescent lights, stressing out over quarterly deliverables. We just didn't. We evolved to move through nature, to create things for the sheer joy of it, and to connect deeply with our community. Jobs aren't some natural law of physics. They are just the system we inherited from that initial shift to agriculture 12,000 years ago. Today, we have unprecedented medical, technological, and material abundance, yet we're desperately trying to buy our own time back with a few meager vacation days a year. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to think about. We traded away our greatest asset, our time and our autonomy, for the civilization we have today. Look around you. Was the trade really worth it?